everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if it's your first time here, then welcome. You've picked a great day to join us. My name is Becca, and today we are talking about Sephora sale recommendations for makeup. So you should probably grab a snack, grab a drink, grab an adult beverage, because this is going to be a long one. Buckle in, we're talking Sephora sale. So if you're not familiar with the Sephora sale, I will leave all of the details in the description box below, as well as links to everything we are going to talk about today. But essentially, the Sephora sale is a tiered sale in which you can get anywhere from 10 to 20% off, depending on your membership status at Sephora. So VIB Rouge get 20% off starting November 5th. VIB get 15% off starting November 9th, and Insiders get 10% off starting November 11th, and the sale lasts from any of those days that I mentioned until November 15th using the code YAYHOLIDAY. So first things first, I want to address sale culture. And there's a lot of hype around the Sephora sale. Obviously, I myself am sharing my Sephora favorites, and I like to do it. I think it's helpful. It's a way of calibrating for me where I'm at in my own makeup collection. But I just want to say the Sephora sale is not a reason to panic. It's not a reason to overspend, and it's certainly not a reason to buy things that you wouldn't buy otherwise. I have personally in the past been definitely caught up in the Sephora sale, and I impulse buy things and I regret it. And I would hate for any of you to end up in that position, and absolutely do not go into debt over beauty products. It's just not worth it. When you really think about it, 10 to 20% off of a beauty product is oftentimes just a matter of dollars, especially when you factor in tax, depending on where you're living. So I just want to say there's no need to panic. I mean, it's nice to have if you're already going to purchase something, or if you're shopping for gifts that you are going to buy anyway, but there's really no reason for you to go blackout shop the sale. And you know what I mean when you blackout shop and you don't even remember what you bought because you got caught up in the frenzy and the panic and the adrenaline and that endorphin rush of buying something. It's just not worth it. But that said, I do want to share my favorites because I want to help you make as informed of a purchase as you can. And if you're looking for something in particular, of course, I want to be helpful. I've done Sephora favorites before in the form of blog posts, and I know it's really helpful to have text in front of you. Maybe you're not a YouTube person, or you just don't have the ability to sit through a very long video, which I totally understand. So I will link all of my past blog posts as well as the blog posts for this sale that I will create in the description box below. I'm going to share today's recommendations in general order of application, or in my general order of application, from base to cheeks to eyes to lips, and then we'll close out with tools, brushes, etc. So I am not a big primer person. To be honest, I really rely on my skincare prep to do the heavy lifting for prepping my skin for makeup. But there is one primer that I've actually recently turned to in the last couple of months, and that is the Milk Hydro Grip Primer. So this actually sort of has a cult following. It had a moment really like a couple of years ago when it was first released, and I only recently just tried it. And it is like a gel-based serum, and it comes with a pump. And I thought this would be really, really sticky and tacky and kind of gluey, and it's actually not that. It's quite spreadable. It's very thin. It creates a really smooth canvas for makeup. It's not pore filling in the way that that super silicone-y kind of primer is, but it really does help elongate the wear of my makeup without adding too much heaviness, which is also something I look for. I don't want to feel primer on my face, and I don't want my base makeup to feel heavier. So this is a really nice option for long wear makeup days. Moving into base products, I'm going to talk from lightest to fullest coverage. So first up, I have the Fenty Ease Drop. This is called the Blurring Skin Tint, and I do find it does exactly that. It is a very thin, lotiony consistency that's very spreadable, and it does somehow filter the pores, even though it's a very thin consistency. It applies in a very lightweight way, but it has surprisingly more coverage than a tint, I think. I think it's actually more of like a light medium coverage sort of product. I wear the shade 9. I do think I've tried the shade 10. I wish there was something between 9 and 10 personally, but 10 is a little bit too warm, 9 is a little bit more neutral. But I really, really like this, and it's surprisingly long wear for a skin tint. I do think it sets down to a sort of natural coverage, and I've heard people with dry skin say it catches on dry patches. I have combo oily skin, more combo in the winter, oily in the summer. So this is perfect for me, and it is quite long lasting, even under a mask. So I just want to let that be known in terms of my skin type as I'm reviewing these foundations, but I will try to speak to other skin types as I'm reviewing them. Then I have the Merit the Minimalist Complexion Stick, which is called a foundation and concealer stick. I wear the shade Sand, and I just demoed this recently, but it's kind of the only foundation stick that I've actually really liked and have come back to. I will say this has quite a luminous finish. Because it's a stick foundation, it has more emollient products that hold it together, and it's not super long wearing just on its own for me. But I do find that when I wear this over a mattifying primer, it extends the wear by quite a few hours, and I really like the way it looks. It also blends beautifully. It is the only foundation stick I've used that blends without effort, especially when you pair this with the Merit No. 1 brush, which I will discuss in the tools and brushes section. That brush is amazing. It blends out like a dream, and it looks very skin-like. The one drawback is that it doesn't have a lot of product, and I actually prefer to use this as a stick concealer rather than an all-over face product, just because I don't think it would last very long that way. But I do really like the finish it gives me, and the color Sand is an excellent match for me. Then I've got a foundation which needs no introduction. If you follow me on Instagram or YouTube, you will know that this is my all-time favorite foundation. It's the Dior Backstage foundation in the shade Too Warm Olive. It's a perfect match for me. It's a very fluid, thin foundation that spreads very easily, and it has a very adjustable coverage from light medium to medium fuller. It's not gonna give you like full coverage, but it's the most skin-like, long-lasting, beautifully wearing foundation that I own, and I've gone through several bottles of this because it just is so reliable for me. It's the kind of foundation that I know whatever the weather is, whatever occasion it is, if I'm wearing a mask, if I'm not, it's just going to look good on me. And for a luxury foundation, the price point is so good. It's $40 for 1.6 ounces. Most foundations are only 1 ounce, and the shade range is also very good for a luxury foundation. So they've got lots of undertones, and they really, really nail the olive undertones in this range. Lastly, I have the foundation that I'm wearing now, and that is the Gucci foundation. So this has received sort of mixed reviews, and I understand why, but let me tell you why I love it. So this is definitely a special occasion foundation for me. It's the fullest coverage foundation that I have. It's not going to be full coverage on the first application, but you can add a second layer if you want to build coverage. But this filters your skin and smooths out pores. It literally looks like you have a filter on your face. And it is a soft lotion consistency, sort of velvety in texture. And I really love this when you apply it with hands. I find that it really melts the product into the skin. And even though I call this my special occasion foundation, it melts into the skin really beautifully. There are a few caveats, which is that I think if you have dry skin, you probably won't love this. I have heard people say it catches on dry patches, probably because of the silicone in the formula. And the second thing is that if you're fragrance sensitive, you will want to avoid this because it is heavily fragranced, unfortunately, like the Gucci makeup line tends to be. I will say this comes in 40 shades, and the shade range is excellent. Like, they really nailed the deep shades. I know Jackie Aina did a very thorough review of this, and not just in terms of shade offering, but in terms of undertone and nuance, they really, really nailed it, especially coming from a luxury line. And I lied, there's one more foundation. It's the Pat McGrath foundation, which I love. I wear the shades LM10 in the winter and LM14 in the summer. And LM14 has a beautiful olive undertone that matches me super well. So this is a more fluid, liquidy foundation, similar to the viscosity of the Dior foundation. It's definitely thinner than the Gucci foundation. It has a similar coverage to the Gucci, I would say medium to medium full, and this looks very skin-like. It has a more luminous, on me, slightly dewy finish, and I think if you have drier skin, you will definitely love this of the foundations that I'm recommending. It's just the kind of foundation that applies beautifully with a brush, with a sponge, with fingers. There's really no way to mess up this application. I have heard some people with dry skin say they don't love it, but I've also heard some people with dry skin say they do. I think it's appropriate for all skin types except perhaps the most oily. You might find this slightly too luminous for you. For concealers, I only have 2 recommendations, which is one for the under eye and one for the face. To be honest, my concealer lineup doesn't change as much, but they are the most like workhorse kinds of products in my routine. So this is the Armani Power Fabric Concealer. Again, not a surprise. I've gone through countless tubes of this because of the spreadability and the thinness of this formula. It's kind of like a gel formula. When you get it, you will see it's actually surprisingly fluid for a concealer consistency. And I only use really 2 dots, one under the eye and one on the outer corner. And it spreads so well with fingers or with a brush without losing coverage. And that's the thing that makes me come back to this concealer over and over and over again, is that it gives me pigmentation, it gives me spreadability, but I don't lose coverage with it somehow. I don't know how it works, but I think it's excellent. It sets to a natural finish. I do powder it personally, and I use shade 5, and it's just so good. I love it. Then I have the NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer. Again, no surprise. This is a potted concealer that has, as the name says, a soft matte finish. But I actually find that when you apply it with fingers or a brush and sort of like tap it in, it takes on the finish of whatever base product you're using it over. So if you have a more luminous foundation and you've used luminous skincare underneath, it will take on the finish of that without losing coverage as well. And you really only need a tiny, tiny bit to really cover up sunspots or hyperpigmentation. It's just excellent. And I use the shade Custard during most of the year, and then I use Ginger in the summer. I can also take a fluffy brush into this on like lower makeup days, and I sort of whisk it around my skin or red spots, and it neutralizes redness without looking like makeup. So that's the thing too, is the coverage is adjustable if you use a fluffy brush to high coverage if you use a more dense brush for spot concealing. But it's just truly a workhorse product, and it's very utilitarian. It's not super exciting, but it's the thing you'll probably use every day. Moving on to cream cheek products. I've separated cream and powder cheek products just for the sake of organization. So first up, I have the Merit Flush Balms. Now, I recently reviewed these in my fall makeup edit, but I have the shades Terracotta and Beverly Hills. And Terracotta is a beautiful, warm burnt peach kind of shade, and Beverly Hills is more of your neutral classic rose. So these are a really interesting formula. They're very dewy, and they're not the kind of cream blush that sets down. They stay dewy and they stay luminous on the cheeks, and they reflect back light in a really beautiful way. If you have oily skin, you probably want to set this with powder or use these over a mattifying primer. Or you can also set them with powder blush of a similar tone. I really like to use these by whisking a brush across the top and then patting onto cheeks. I actually find I get the most even application that way. I've also seen people apply these directly to the cheeks, but I'm just a brush person, so I like them applied that way. They're a very sheer, like juicy pop of color. They're great for like a no makeup, low makeup kind of day. They're not gonna give you like a ton of pigmentation. There's other blushes for that, but these are more of your no makeup, daytime, like fresh, model off duty kind of makeup. Then I've got the Fenty Cream blushes, and I think these are highly underrated. Honestly, the shade Rosé Latte I also discussed in my fall makeup edit, but it is a beautiful brownie rose that is sort of like a bronzer, like a blush bronzer hybrid. And it sheers out to the most beautiful, like rusty, yeah, brown rose sort of shade. And then if you're interested in the purple blush TikTok trend, Drama Class is a great shade for that. So I know this looks scary, but once it's blended out on the cheeks, it actually creates the most beautiful, like juicy pink flush. It's one of those things that you have to see on the face. It doesn't translate as purple. It actually translates almost as like a cool berry pink flush. I just think it's a really cool shade. It's a fun way to play with color, and it actually looks surprisingly natural when it's on the cheeks. For liquid blush, I have the Vision Flush by Denona Myricks, which is beautiful. So I have this shade Ballet Slippers. So it comes in a doe foot applicator, and this is a really beautiful burnt peachy terracotta kind of shade. Obviously I have a type. This is what I'm wearing on my cheeks today. And this formula might be a little bit scary, but let me give you an application tip, which is to take a dot on the back of your hand, work it into the brush on the back of the hand so that it's distributed throughout the brush very evenly, and then tap on lightly. And it will give you the most even, sheared out, like watercolor application of blush that you can get. If you apply this directly to cheeks, it's very pigmented and you may find it difficult to blend out from the spot where you applied it. But I will say, if you are someone with oily skin or dewier skin that wants to play with liquid or cream cheek products, but you're afraid of the super, super dewy finish, this is the one for you, because this will set down. Not super matte, it still gives your cheeks some life. It looks more like you're blushing from within, but it won't slide around, it won't stay dewy, it actually really does set down. There's also a shade called Tiara that's a beautiful golden champagne. If you want to try a liquid highlighter, but you don't want it to stay too dewy on the skin, Tiara is also an excellent option for that. Then I have the Tower 28 Beach Please Cream Blush in the shade Magic Hour. So I've gone on a bit of a journey with Tower 28. I tried them in the beginning when they were first released, and then I was quite disappointed by their bronzer release initially, which was very, very fair. And since then, they've taken a lot of feedback and they've extended the bronzer range. They've partnered with Black and POC makeup artists to extend their blush range. And they've also recently come out with a tinted SPF that I think is the best shade range for that category of product that I've seen in a long time, or maybe ever. So it's one of those brands where I've witnessed in practice a lot of change around the inclusivity of the brand, and I'm really happy to see them take feedback. So I'm including their products in my recommendations now. So this is the shade Magic Hour, which is a beautiful peachy pink. This is a very thick cream blush. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that the formula is very melty and it's dewy. And at first, when I was applying it with fingers, I actually found it to be a little bit too heavy. But then I applied it with a brush and I've come to like it much better that way, or even with a sponge. So I actually find that when I use a brush or a sponge, it feels a bit less sticky than it does on the skin when I use my fingers. And I just think that's because the cream formula really melts to your fingers, and so it tends to pick up more product with your fingers versus with a brush or a sponge. But it gives you a very even application, and it's surprisingly pigmented, and it looks very, very skin-like and natural. It's a step above Merit, and it's a step below Denona Myricks. Something I also want to say that compels me to talk about Tower 28 is the price point. The price point is very accessible. I think their products range between $15 and $30 maximum, and I think Sephora is doing a very good job of bringing in more accessible budget brands that still offer really elevated elegant products, but are more accessible than like the luxury makeup brands that Sephora is often known for carrying. So I do want to include Tower 28 because I think it's important to have an offering of products at this price point. The next product I can't seem to find in front of me. I know I have it, but I don't know where it is. It's the Fenty Cream Bronzer in the shade Macchiato. I love the finish of this bronzer. It sets to a very natural finish. It's neither matte nor dewy, and Macchiato is a really beautiful neutral caramel undertone with a slightly yellow undertone as well. And it works really well as a sculpting bronzer for my skin tone because of its neutral undertone and it's not super, super warm. I find that I'm able to slightly contour with this and it looks really good year round. And the last cream or liquid cheek product is the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter. I don't find Charlotte Tilbury's line to be the most inclusive, but I do find this product to have a great shade range for a liquid luminizer. So I am including this here. I wear the shade number 4 and I use this either like as a glowy primer on my cheekbones underneath foundation or even over foundation. And it applies beautifully both ways. I always get compliments on my skin when I'm wearing this. Some days I'm only wearing this on like a no makeup day and I've gotten compliments on my skin. Even when I'm wearing a mask, people will be like, oh, your skin looks really nice. And it's always this. I don't know what to tell you. It's very good. And I think they have recently expanded the shade range of this to include a few deeper shades as well as some tan shades, and it just looks good on everyone. As for powder cheek products, I actually only have one powder blush and one powder bronzer. It's just not been the year of powder products for me, except for these two. So first up is the bronzer that I have on now, and that is the Gucci bronzer. This won't be a bronzer for everybody in that it's very fragranced, like I mentioned about Gucci makeup, and it also has a bit of luminosity through it. So this is not your super matte bronzer. It has a bit of luminosity, not that you can see any like sparkles, but it just gives a bit of light to the face. So I wear the shade number 3 medium. It comes in this beautiful compact in the little velvet case. And I have to admit that with Gucci makeup, the packaging is part of the experience for me. And as a beauty lover, the experience makes a big difference. So this is what the pan looks like. You open it up and there's a mirror, and then you open up the lower compartment and you get a little Gucci brush. I have never used the brush. I've never even taken it out of its packaging, but I do love this bronzer. Obviously, like, it's bulky. It's not the kind of thing you want to travel with at all. It's quite delicate, but it just applies really beautifully. It blends out really evenly for me. And the shade number 3 gives me a really nice warm bronzer that's not too overwhelming. I actually at first didn't love the undertone of this bronzer because it's a little bit more red than I go for. I tend to go for more caramel yellow. This is on the redder side, but it still has a caramel undertone. So it's actually a shade that's really, really grown on me this year, and I'm wearing it now, and I love the way it looks. And the blush that I'm going to mention is the Laura Mercier Color Infusion Blush in the shade Fresco. I just mentioned this in my fall makeup edit, and I will drop in footage here. It's a truly neutral beige rose. And what I mean by that is that on the cheeks, it almost looks like my skin tone, but if you turned the saturation up a little bit. So it doesn't feel like I'm wearing a rosy cheek or a burnt terracotta cheek or a cool tone cheek. It just looks like my skin, but a little bit amplified. And I find that the formula, it's a powder, but it's very creamy and it sort of melts into the skin. It doesn't look powdery at all. It does have a bit of luminosity, but I find that it actually helps it look more skin-like. There's no actual like glitter in it. Okay, I just took a break to eat some lunch, and this is a reminder for you to go get a snack or a drink because we are diving into eyeshadows, which is probably the largest category in this video. We're gonna start out with singles, quads, or smaller format palettes. The first product is something I recommend all the time, and it's a product that I think was very ahead of its time when it was released. So this is the Tom Ford Cream and Powder Duo. eyeshadow, and this is in the shade Golden Peach. So this is a dual product, and on the bottom there's a cream shadow. It's a very moussey, rosy champagne, peachy champagne. And then on the top, there is a pressed shimmer, and it's the kind of shimmer that has a very sheer, transparent base, but it's really twinkly and gives the lids a sort of wet look. And you can wear these obviously either separately or together, but I just love this. I wear this all of the time. I've had this specific jar for longer than I care to admit, and it has not gone off. It performs beautifully. The bottom is this like stunning, moussey, creamy formula that starts out sheer, but it can be built up. And the topper is one of those things that you can really get your finger in the pan, and it has a clear base and it looks really twinkly across the eyelids. And I love this, honestly, even just on its own. And then let me show you them together. And it just builds up this really beautiful, like wet looking peachy shine across the lids. It's just stunning. They also have this in the shade, they have a few shades of this, but Naked Bronze is another beautiful one. And yeah, if you're a really minimalist makeup user, but you want something sophisticated and something that you can wear very easily on the go, it travels really well. I always travel with this because of how compact it is. It would be perfect for you. Then I've got these cute little eyeshadow trios by Kaja Beauty, which is a K-beauty brand that Sephora carries. So each of these have 3 layers and 3 eyeshadows. They're super cute. They contain a variety of mattes, of metallics, and shimmers. The one that I think is the most special of all of them, and this is Orange Blossom. So this has only shimmery shades, but they have this really beautiful textural complexity to them that really builds dimension. And each of these is a beautiful one and done shadow, like across the whole eye. So moving into eyeshadow quads, this is one of my most used palettes. It's not a new release, but it's a product that is so perfect that I wouldn't change it. It is the Tom Ford Honeymoon Quad, and it looks like this. There are 4 baked gelée eyeshadows in here. So there's a sparkly champagne, a mid-tone warm bronzy shade, a cranberry, and a plum. And these are all baked gelée, which means that they are not powdery at all. They create a really smooth, like glidey finish across the eye. And for that reason, I think this formula is really flattering for people of all ages, especially mature eyes, because of how, I don't know, how smooth they make the eyelid look. This is also a palette I travel with all the time because it has everything I need. Even though there are no mattes in here, the shades range from satiny to twinkly. So yeah, obviously I love the color story of Honeymoon, but I think Tom Ford's Baked Gelée formula in general, like if any of those color stories appeal to you, you can't go wrong. It's so smooth and just satisfying to use and easy to use. And the last quad that I have to mention is something that is so underrated in Pat McGrath's line. It is her quad specifically in the shade Ritualistic Rose. So this was a holiday release, I think 2 years ago, but it's still around. And this is the only quad that is comprised of all special shades. If you're not familiar with Pat McGrath, like people always talk about her special shades, which are these beautifully flaky, textured, like micro glitter, complex shades that are baked, a baked formula. So they're very smooth across the surface. And then as you swatch them, they pick up texture and like, it's almost like angel dust. Like you pick it up and the twinkles are very lightweight. Like if you blew on your finger, they would scatter into the air. They do create fallout, so you do want to pair these with a glitter glue or an eye primer, but I love the color story of this quad and no one talks about it. So those are the swatches. I think you can see there's a range of depth and complexity. Some are more twinkly, there's a duochrome. It's just a really interesting range of shadows. And if you are curious to try the Pat McGrath formula, but you're scared to dive into the motherships, this is a great place to start. So while we're talking Pat McGrath, let's move into the big eyeshadow palettes, the large format palettes, and let's talk about the motherships. So Pat McGrath palettes, the motherships, which is what her large palettes are called, are no joke, okay? They're like $125 or $29. They're very expensive, but you're paying for the brand experience. You're paying for premium quality product as well as packaging. So I have 5 motherships. I have Mothership 5. I have the Mothership, which one was this? 4 Decadence. I have Divine Rose 1 and 2, and I have Utopian Dream. So let's go through each one. This is Mothership 5, and it is my most used Pat McGrath palette, probably surely because it's the one that I've owned the longest. It was my first Pat McGrath palette, and also because it's the most neutral of the bunch. I find that it has the most quote unquote wearable shades. There's these warm browns, coppers, and then you have the rose toned colors, that metallic red. And because of the color story in here, it's very easy to wear. And I actually wore this on my wedding day. I wore a mix of the mattes as well as the rose gold special shade. I think this is the easiest Mothership palette to jump into for a neutral makeup lover. Obviously, some of the Mothership palettes are very, very colorful, very out there. And I think if you're someone that loves, you know, browns and easy wearable looks, this is the place to jump in. Then we've got Divine Rose 1, which I think is also another great palette to jump into the brand if you wear softer eyeshadow looks. So this has a really soft, rosy lavender color story. There are special shades in here. The metallics are very creamy. I actually love this rosy plum shade all over the eye. I think this is a palette that swatches much more richly than it looks in the pan. In the pan, you might be like, oh, that's kind of like a dusty lavender, but they're very transformative on the eyes. But I will say, because I'm someone that likes warmer tones, I reach for this one a little bit less because it leans on the slightly cooler side because of the mattes that ground this palette. And then I have Divine Rose 2, which is the uber pigmented cousin to Divine Rose 1. They're very different in color story. Obviously, these colors pack more of a punch. You've got way more pigmentation, and you have this trichrome shade that's very cool. I'm actually wearing the special shade in here. I don't know what the name of it is, but I'm wearing this blended out all over the lid, and they make for a really beautiful, like twinkly, wet lid sort of look when you blend them out all over. But like I mentioned, you do want to either do your eyes first or use a glitter glue with these shades. It's worth it for me to do the extra step because I love the finish of these eyeshadows, but just be aware, I do like to temper expectations because this is such an expensive palette. I do want you to be very aware of the nuances of the formula. Then we've got her latest Mothership, which is Utopian Dream, and this is more of a pinky purple leaning palette. So I was really surprised by this palette because I see a huge improvement in her formulas overall. If you like rosy tones, I would go for this one because there's just such a step up in terms of the creaminess and the pigmentation and the blendability across all of the formulas. I did do a full comprehensive review with 4 different looks of this palette, so I will link that in the cards. So let's move on to the other queen of eyeshadows, which is Natasha Denona. So her palettes, the large format palettes, also run at $125 or $129, and then she has her midi palettes and then the mini palettes. So the first one is my most used, one of my most used palettes ever, and it's the Biba palette. This is a palette that is very neutral, and it's not the kind of palette that might make your heart go pitter-patter the way a Mothership might, but it's truly a workhorse, and I reach for it all the time. I keep it handy because it forms the base of so many of my eyeshadow looks. And that's the thing about Biba, is even if you're creating an eyeshadow look that's not like, ooh, that's the Biba palette, it's still going to be very functional and useful in the eyeshadow looks that you create, whether they're Natasha Denona looks or not. On the total opposite spectrum of the Biba palette, I have the Trio Chrome palette. So this is an explosion of color and a truly unique color story, which I think is hard to create, honestly, in the beauty market being what it is today. But there's a mix of really interesting mattes as well as 3 Trio Chrome shades like down the middle here. But these colors are so richly pigmented. Like when you swatch these, they are not the watered down, washed down version of this color. They swatch true to color. So let me just show you. Okay, so I just swatched some of the shades there for you, but they're just so interesting and unique. And I think if you're a color lover and you love Natasha Denona, there is a person out there who will really appreciate this palette. I just spoke about the bronze palette, so I won't go into too much detail here, but this is one of her midi palettes. And so you get the same layout of her larger palettes, but they come in smaller quantities, which I think is great. I wish she would release all of her large palettes in this format because I think the price point is so much more accessible. I mean, it's still expensive. I think these are $65, but compared to her larger palettes, it's accessible. Bronze is a warm-toned lover's dream. It has every shade of bronze you could desire. The formulas are super creamy, are very rich and blendable. And then I have the Natasha Denona Zendo palette, which is also a midi palette. And I think this is a great way to play with color if you're a neutrals lover, but you maybe want to step outside of your comfort zone. So this palette is a huge leap in terms of formulation for Natasha Denona. And this is the thing about Natasha Denona, is I feel like they're always tweaking their formulas just a little bit to be better, creamier, more pigmented, more blendable. And the formulas in here are so soft and so just a joy to use, like a textural joy to use. The metallics are almost cream-like. Even her creamy matte formula, it actually feels like a cream shadow in the pan. And there's some beautiful one and done shadows in here. You can create complex looks, you can create natural looks, and then you can also like dive into blues and greens over here. So I think this is a palette that strikes a balance between neutrals and colors. That's it for eyeshadows. Let's move on to eyeliners, mascara, and eyebrows. So for eyeliners, these are an old school favorite. I have the Urban Decay 24/7 Glide On pencils, and I just think they're excellent. They're creamy, they're pigmented, they're smudgeable, but they also set down and they don't move. I can wear these in the waterline or on the lash line and they don't smear. I especially love these 2 shades. So this is Alkaline, which is kind of like a wine maroon burgundy kind of color. And then I have the shade Whiskey, which is just a classic warm brown. Let me swatch them for you. You can see how creamy they are. I love Whiskey. As a brunette, I feel like a warm brown actually brings out the warmer tones. And then for Alkaline, I actually think this plummy burgundy shade really flatters people with dark hair as well. So it makes the brunette qualities pop, both of these. I would be remiss not to discuss the Shiseido lash curler. This is my favorite lash curler ever, and it's the first lash curler I ever loved. It has a slightly less curved profile than some traditional Western lash curlers have, so I find that it really suits my eye shape. I mean, Shiseido is a Japanese brand, so it's designed with, I think, Asian eyes and face shapes in mind, and because of that, it's able to catch every single baby lash. And for me, I like to start at the base of my lashes and then pump the curler as I move towards the end of the lash, so I get a full curl like all the way up and around rather than just one curl up, if that makes sense. And so it's just super efficient. And also don't forget to refill your lash curler pads. You can buy replacements for that as well. This has been a good year for mascara, and I have two recommendations. So the first is the Rare Beauty, I forget what this is called. It's the Rare Beauty mascara. It's so good. I'm wearing it today. It builds volume, it holds curl, it creates a very separated, fluttery lash look, and it does not smudge. It just does everything, and it creates length. The wand looks very large. It is very large. This is the mini size, by the way. But because the notches are so defined in the wand, it's able to really get in between each lash hair and separate and create a very fanned out look. And the formula is really black. The thing I like about this, and that I first noticed, is that the formula is not very wet. So it doesn't clump, and you're able to build very well without the formula clumping up because it's a drier formula. And I think I'm definitely gonna pick up a full size in this. The second mascara came out earlier this year, and it's also great for creating like a big bad lash. So this is the Bite Beauty Upswing Mascara, and this has an even bigger wand. It's an hourglass shape. So this is a very black in color and very volume building and length building as well. I do find it takes a bit more work for me to, how do I say this? Like to scrape off the wand because it's so thick, and because of that hourglass shape, I do get quite a bit of product buildup like right in the middle, and I find myself needing to swipe off the wand a lot before I go in, probably because I have smaller eyes. I think if you have really big eyes, maybe you wouldn't have this issue. So it takes a little bit more babying, but it builds such a dramatic lash. Maybe more drama, I think, than the Rare Beauty one. It's even more volumizing, even more lengthening, and it's also buildable, not quite as buildable as the Rare Beauty without clumps. It takes a little bit more babying, as I said, but it's great for special occasions or when you want, yeah, just a big, bold lash. It's great for that. And then for brows, I've gone on and on about this, so I won't spend too long. It's the Refi Brow Sculpt. I use it every single day. It's my new favorite brow gel. It's actually more of a brow pomade than a gel, which is what I like about it. It gives me a lot of vertical hold. It lasts all day. I think there are mixed reviews about this because you do have to use it in a particular way. I always use this on clean brows. So I take my micellar water through my eyebrows after my skincare, dry them off, and then use this, and it gives me the best hold. And I also press the product through my brows and press the brow hairs down onto the skin. And I think that helps take away some excess product. If you do use too much, I do think you risk flaking and some white cast through the brows. I do always follow with a brow pen, so I don't notice the white cast as much, but if you're only going to use this, you may want to be a bit more conservative in how you use it. If the white cast is an issue for you, then the Benefit 24-Hour Brow Setter is excellent. This is more of a traditional gel. It's kind of more like a liquid glue that will actually lacquer your brow hairs down as it's drying. So what I do, this is a wetter formula, I apply and then I wait like 30 seconds for it to get tacky, and as it's getting tacky through the brows, I press the brow hairs down in the direction that I want them to go. And this will also last all day long. All right, we are moving right along into lip products, starting with lip liners. So I have two formulas that I want to talk about. The first is the Makeup Forever Artist Color Pencil. So these are multifunction pencils, but so they can be used on the face, on the eyes, but I really just use them on the lips. So Anywhere Caffeine is my all-time favorite lip liner. It's the closest to my natural lip shade, and this is my warm nude. I recently picked up Endless Cacao, influenced by Katie Jane Hughes, who loves this, and I get it. This is a very, very cool toned lip contour shade. And I feel like it's really good for building definition around the lips because it's a cool tone. These are traditional pencil lip liners and they tend to run on the drier side. So they're definitely matte in finish and they don't tug or anything while applying, but they're not like the super creamy lip pencil formulas. These are drier and therefore longer wearing. For a creamier lip formula, I've been enjoying the Lawless Forget the Filler lip liners, specifically the shade Pink Sand for like a peachy pink nude, and then the shade Honey Rose, which is a rosewood. So this is also a traditional pencil, but it's definitely creamier than the Makeup Forever ones. It's not gonna be like shiny or anything like that, but it has more of a glide on the lips. So going from side to side, this is Makeup Forever Anywhere Caffeine, Makeup Forever Endless Cacao, Lawless Pink Sand, and Lawless Honey Rose. So you've got a variety of nudes, pinks, rosewoods. I think you might even be able to tell in the swatches that these the Makeup Forever ones are much more matte and the Lawless pencils have a creaminess to them. So I'm gonna move into lip balms and I'm including them here because I know a lot of us use them in our makeup step or as makeup. So first I have the Laneige Lip Glowy Balm, which is essentially the liquid lip balm version of their lip sleeping mask. So I use both of these all the time, but for different purposes. I definitely use the lip sleeping mask at night. It's a very soft but rich, buttery lip mask. I have used this every night for like 6 or 7 years and I never get chapped lips. I love the original berry scent as well as the vanilla scent. There are a couple limited edition ones as well as holiday ones that look really cute, but these take forever to go through. I mean, Sean and I share this and we go through one maybe a year, so they're huge, they're amazing. The Lip Glowy Balm is the daytime version of that. It's not comparable in formula though. This is definitely thinner. It's almost glossy in its appearance and it almost functions more as a moisturizing lip gloss for me than the lip mask. And it also comes in a few different scents and this is the grapefruit one. I really love it. It's also nice if you want something moisturizing but you don't feel like dipping your fingers into a pot. Then I have 2 lip formulas from Fresh, which does lip balms so well. The first one is the Hydrating Lip Balm, and this is just their classic potted lip balm, and it looks like this. This is the scent Blood Orange, which I think was limited edition, but they're all beautiful. There's watermelon, there's peach, there's mango, there's coconut, there's caramel. I mean, there's one for anybody and everybody. It smells so good. And if you get a tinted one, they do slightly, ever so slightly tint the lips. For something richer, Fresh came out with a lip mask this year. And this is like the mask version of their stick lip balms, which I also love. I just don't have them on hand. Those are great for a stick format. This has that lemony sugar scent. Oh, it's so good. The lemony sugar scent of their traditional stick lip balm. This is a bit waxier and definitely thicker and stiffer in formula than the Laneige Lip Sleeping Mask. The Laneige, you dip your finger in and it's like immediately melty and buttery. This is a bit stiffer in the pot, but then it melts onto the lips and it becomes really balmy and masky and it coats the lips. It gives you a bit of shine. They're both excellent. It just depends on what you're in the mood for. Moving into lip oils, I have 2 lip oil formulas. So the first one is the Dior Lip Glow, and this is very sheer and it's a very thick, rich, I don't want to say sticky because that sounds bad, but it is like juicy. And this creates a very like glass lips kind of look, like a very, very wet lip look. And it's lightly tinted. It does come in different tints. This is the original pink. I really have my eye on the mahogany version of this, which looks like a beautiful tint. But if you want something that's a lip treatment, but it's really glossy and it's gonna grip your lips and really stay on the lips for a good amount of time, this is a great option. The next lip oil is much more of a makeup-y item. So I have the Merit lip oils. I also just discussed these in my fall makeup edit. These are beautiful. They're a really juicy oil meets gloss formula. They're definitely thinner than the Dior lip oils. So these are not a true oil consistency. Like I said, they're like an oil gloss hybrid, and they are moisturizing over time. They start out sheer with one layer and then they're buildable, but they're not long lasting. I love the shade curation of this line. I especially love these three that I have that I will swatch for you. So these are the swatches. On the top, I have Cara Cara, which is a beautiful orangey red, but it's a very approachable red, orangey red, because it's sheer. In the middle, I have Marrakesh, which is a gorgeous, juicy peach, everyday kind of shade. It really livens up the face. And then there's Taupe, which is a gorgeous, like caramely milk chocolate, beautiful for fall. So because these are sheer, I think they would appeal to people who don't wear a lot of makeup, but maybe want a bit of something. But they also have such interesting shades that I think makeup lovers would wear them too and love them too. So this is one of my favorite things from Merit that I've tried, and I kind of want to collect them all. Then moving into lip glosses, I have the Fenty Gloss Bombs, which I love. I have their clear one, the one in Hot Chocolate, which is a really cool, like complex chocolatey brown, but it's still very sheer, but it kind of lends a bit of warmth to the lips. It's almost like a mahogany kind of warmth to the lips. Obviously a beautiful nude for deeper skin tones as well. And then I love the original Fenty Gloss Bomb. I actually just retired mine recently because it was time to go, but that's my favorite one. I think it's a beautiful, like just a beautiful juicy lip on anybody. But these are just a classic lip gloss formula. They're not sticky, they're not super long wearing, they're just straightforward glosses. And even though there's shimmer in the formulas, they don't look glittery on the lips. They just make your lips look plumper and fuller and juicier. The other lip gloss formula is the Pat McGrath formula, which has much more variation in the line. So Sephora doesn't carry all of the gloss shades, but I do think they carry these two. So this one is my most used. It's called Flesh Astral, and it's like a cream formula with a pearly sheen that runs through it. And this is, I don't know, lip filler in a gloss. It makes my lips just look fuller and juicier, and it kind of smooths them over. And then there's a glittery formula, which is really fun. This is called Pale Fire Nectar. And so there's almost like a duochrome flip in here. It's like a bright pink with a slightly lilac duochrome flip. It doesn't look quite as sparkly on the lips as it does in the tube. So on this side is Pale Fire Nectar, and this side is Flesh Astral. So let's move into traditional bullet lipsticks, and I have to say this is where Gucci really shines and does their thing. So let me tell you about each formula. This is their new Glow and Shine lipstick formula, and it's quickly become my favorite formula within the Gucci range. These come in a much slimmer bullet format. They're very cute, and they have, you know, the Gucci vintage vibe. I have two different shades. The first is Goldie Red, which is the classic Gucci red. It's a very bright, slightly blue-based, but very, very like cherry bright kind of red. And then I have my favorite, which is my Cousin Rachel. And this is what I'm wearing today. So the Gucci Glow and Shine formula is the most moisturizing and like emollient of all of the Gucci formulas. It's definitely a soft formula in that as soon as you start to apply it to the lips, you feel it start to sort of melt. And I think that meltiness is also what gives it the shine, and it gives it this really comfortable feeling across the lips. It's moisturizing over time. So that's my Cousin Rachel, and that is Goldie Red. The next formula I have is their sheer lipsticks. So these are a very interesting and unique formula. They're similar to the Glow and Shine in that they're sheer, but they're not as shiny. They're actually more of a waxy formula that melts on the lips, but it's much thinner in viscosity and texture than the Glow and Shine. So I have the shade Agatha Orange, which is such a me shade. It's their orangey red. And I think this makes an orangey red super approachable if you want to play around in that color family, but you're scared to commit to a really, really opaque matte lipstick. I actually don't have any of the Gucci satin lipsticks, though I do have my eye on them. The last formula I have is their matte lipstick. So it comes in this all gold tube, and this is the shade They Met in Argentina. So They Met in Argentina is a very interesting shade. Here's a swatch of it. It's obviously very opaque, but it's also very, very creamy. It's not like a super flat matte. And They Met in Argentina is like this bright, happy coral, but it's kind of like an earthier coral. It really pops on the lips. And these do set down, but they're not like, you won't have butthole lips, if you know what I mean. And it's a very silicone-y, like velvety formula, so it will smooth over lip lines. The last traditional bullet lipstick that I will mention is the YSL Tatouage Couture lipsticks. So these are also shiny, juicy, sheer lipsticks. That's just what I'm into this year. I have not worn a lot of matte full pigment lips. I have a newer shade that they released, which is called, what is it called? I think it's called Chili something. I will link it below. But it's this beautiful burnt bright orange. It starts out sheer, that's like built up. That's just one layer, but it's a beautiful shade, and they have, I mean, a range of pinks and nudes and browns and reds and oranges, corals, all of that. So I really think there's a shade for everybody in here, but it's a beautiful lip formula. It's hydrating over time, and obviously it's YSL, so the packaging is just beautiful. So that's everything for makeup. I just have a few brushes and tools that I want to mention. So the first one I've already mentioned is the Merit No. 1 brush. And this is a synthetic brush that is meant to blend out base makeup, and it's cut at an angle. I've already washed it. It washes very well, but the thing that's most notable about it is how soft it is. It honestly feels like one of my Japanese natural bristle brushes, and it blends out so evenly. I love that the bristles have just the right amount of give, that it makes blending very soft and very easy. It's not super firm. I also think the Sephora collection brushes are excellent. They are all synthetic brushes. I especially love the brush number 56. So this was a limited edition packaging, but it comes in the standard black, what's this word? Handle. It's been a long day. So this is traditionally a foundation brush, and this is what it looks like. It's sort of slimmer on one end, and then it's whiter here. It's made for foundation, and I love it for that, but I especially love it for cream blush, which is how I used it today with the Danessa Myricks Vision Flush blush. I just sort of stamp it on my cheeks, and because it's a smaller brush with a slimmer profile, I actually find it stamps on cream products really, really well. Then I've got my Tweezerman tweezers. These are the best tweezers ever. They are so precise. I didn't even know there was a difference in the quality of tweezers until I tried these, and I've had the same tweezers for like 10 years, and they're excellent. They're just so good. I have the flat tip ones here. They also make a pointed tip one if you want something for more precision. And it's just one of those things, again, you don't realize you need a good one until you get a good one and you're like, whoa, what have I been missing out on? The Tweezerman tweezers are just very, very good. The last item I want to share is a makeup bag. It is the Sephora Pack It All organizer. It's very large. It's not something I really travel with unless it's for special events, but in that case, it's always come in handy. So it's a soft shell. but it has a handle up top and it really holds its shape. And it's soft but padded, so it will keep your palettes very safe. I've traveled with my Natasha Denona palettes, my McGrath palettes, and I've never had any issues in this case. So here's what it looks like. The top zips up, and there's slots for brushes, and then you get a little Ziploc in here that's like a durable net with plastic, and then the inside of this bag is very deep. You get 2 of these containers within the organizer. I've even used this just to store makeup, like not for travel, but for storage because it's so easy to organize. So it's just one of those things that I think the Sephora collection does really well. So if you've made it this far, you are amazing, you're a trooper. I do have parts 2 and potentially 3 coming with skincare, hair care, body care, and fragrance. So stay tuned for those. Do check out the blog post, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.